coming over tonight.
Hey everybody, this is Tommy Canale, and welcome back to the Feist Pro Football Handicapping Show here at DeMarco's Pizzeria and Wine Bar, located at 9785 West Charleston Boulevard here in Las Vegas, on a beautiful patio, a place that has award-winning pizza, happy hour, chicken fingers, chicken wings, meatballs. Matter of fact, the whole menu is award-winning. And as well as award-winning, I got 3 award-winning panelists next to me. First, before we introduce them, Jim Feist, I got to talk to you about something here. This is just me. It's just my opinion. I called it the Super Boring Bowl. I was not impressed with this Super Bowl at all. But you send me a text, and all I see is win, 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 win. You won like 100 out of 100 bets.
It wasn't that many, but it was like, I think 19 out of 20. I'll settle with that. I'm going to call it the Bad Bunny Bowl, and he was good luck to me. So he can be the entertainment every year if I can have this kind of a record.
Let's introduce our panel. At the very end, we have that's been running sportsbooks since 1981. That started at the Stardust, and author of 3 books. He's got a 4th coming. And on the Sports Gambling Hall of Fame voting committee, Chris Andrews, welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot for having me, guys.
You are welcome. And in between all of us, we have a retired bookie. He's been at Caesar's Palace, the Hilton, Station Casinos. He wrote a book about 30 years that Albert told me is called The Sports Book, and has a brand new one called The Bookie, How I Bet It All on Sports Gambling and Watch the Industry Explode. Art Manteris, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. Good to see everybody again. Thank you.
Let's get into this. I want to talk about your guys' books.
It's a real honor to have these 2 gentlemen here. I don't know Chris very well. I know Art pretty well from, 30, 40 years ago when I came here to Vegas 55 years ago. It's been a long time, but these guys are pros. They've been here a long, long time, and they probably should write some books.
They probably should.
They probably should.
We have
Chris
we've read them. We want to
right, exactly. We have a legendary panel here, and Jim, I want to talk about with you with this, and Art and Chris, feel free to chime in, because at the beginning of the year, you were telling me the Sharks were getting killed. The Sharks weren't doing well. But at the end of the year, it seemed like everything came together, and at the end, the Sharks are the ones that won, although I did see for the 2nd year in a row, the Sportsbook had one of the lowest betting things in history in the last decade. But for you, did you come back around from the start of the season?
Well, I didn't have a bad season at all. I mean, it just started making a little, but I always start slow because I don't bet much in the early part. But I think these 2 gentlemen can tell you more about the handle than I can, because I'm on the other end of it. I just bet what I bet. They take bets from people, sharp people, and we've got a lot of those sharp people right here on the show every week. But, to me, just an overview of how I feel about the NFL. I love the NFL. Don't get me wrong. But it is a B league, in my opinion. There's really not a great team. There are a lot of bad teams. And you can see that. Look at all the coaches that have been fired already. Yep. The young quarterbacks that get shook up when you put pressure on them, like Drake May. But, they look good if you're playing bad teams. But if you play good teams, they're not going to look too good. And that's what happened in the Super Bowl.
Chris, for you, how was it from the book side?
Well, for the year, our handle was down.
Was down.
Yeah. Now, the win was very good, though. The win was much better than it was last year. And as a matter of fact, I could say the same for the Super Bowl. The handle was down, but we actually won more money this year than we did last year. Now,
even on the Super Bowl?
Yeah, even on the Super Bowl. Now, I didn't win 19 out of 20, but I did like Seattle, and I climbed the ladder. I laid 4.5, 7.5, and 10.5.
That's exactly what I did on that part of it. I had money line 4.5, 7.5, 9.5, 10.5, and obviously they all cashed, but I had a ton of them.
Yeah, I didn't mess around with any of the others. I was looking for a money line, but I never really saw one that I thought gave me a lot of value. Now, again, as a bookmaker, I try not to use my opinion too much, but sometimes you can't help it. Mm-hmm. And I happen to like Seattle, so I ran the game high, money line, point spread, props, kind of the same thing. So Michael Gahn was happy at the end, which always makes me happy. So, everything's good so far right now.
Art, for you, you've been in this industry for a long time, back by when they were writing tickets, and now we have everything going online. Where is this industry going to go?
That's a good question. The industry today is certainly a far different industry than I entered in 1980. Back then, we were writing everything by hand, and the only good thing I can say about that is it was a great education because you had to chart manually, you had to calculate parlays manually, pay out on the fly with the live tickets. So it was the greatest education for a bookmaker you could ever imagine. But today, where's it going? I don't know. You know, if somebody brought to me 15 years ago the concept of prediction markets, and I almost laughed them out of my office. I didn't take it seriously. I read the white paper that was presented, and I just couldn't imagine in a million years that would be legal. But right now, you know, they are flourishing. But I'm real curious to see what happens in the next year, especially here in Nevada.
They have something now I don't even know about, but I hear about it. Mention markets, or if you can make a bet on whether somebody is going to say a word or a phrase. I mean, this is like, I'm serious. A broadcaster.
What do you want me to say? How much are you going to bet? I'll help you out.
You got it. We can rig this pretty good.
Well, in these prediction markets, you can bet on almost anything.
Right.
That's true. So I think that's where
I wouldn't even know where to go to make that bet, but I read about it, and it's insane. Now, also the other side of it is, how many people are getting hurt by having betting available to them? Young kids, college kids, high school kids. What are we going to do about that? I'm sure there's got to be some legislation.
Yeah, and that is something that I talk about in the book. Now, of course, I talk about, you know, certain experiences that I had in the gaming industry over 43 years. But at the end of the day, I do think things are moving too fast and too far, and some states don't have the experience in regulating sports gambling. Some operators in certain states don't have the experience of operating in a regulated world. So there has been some mistakes, and it has gone too far and too fast. And I'm not pleased personally with the relationship between the leagues and the gambling companies. I don't like that. I like the separation.
They're like in bed together.
Absolutely, yeah, and that has really surprised me. You know, guys like me and Chris were vilified for our whole careers.
Well, we were all bad people. I mean, I was on the bad people side too.
Absolutely,
for a long time.
Yeah, and now all of a sudden they're official sponsors and official partners. You know, I did not see that coming.
Right.
Jim, let me ask you this, because you had mentioned throughout, we talked about all year about a lot of bad teams in the NFL.
Terrible. Yes.
Okay, the Patriots are in the Super Bowl. They didn't have a good schedule. They played a lot of weak teams. But are the Patriots a serious threat in the AFC next year?
Well, of course. I mean, they're going to rebuild. I mean, I'm sure they have some draft capital, and they have a good coach. And I think Drake May is going to be a good quarterback, but he needs a lot of experience. I mean, when they put early in the game, I mean, if you follow football like I do, Seattle put a lot of pressure. Mm-hmm. Their pressure rate early in the game was much higher than their pressure rate throughout the year. And the first part of that game, they put tremendous pressure on Drake May, and he was like a deer in headlights.
He couldn't handle the moment.
No, well, it got too big for him. He didn't know where to make the decisions, and he got panicked. And instead of escaping the pressure, he was running right into it. And so he's a young kid. Will he learn? I think he has the capability to learn. I think he's talented, and I think that Vrabel is a great coach. I think it's just going to take time. It's a very weak AFC this year, and I think honestly, I think the best AFC team that could have given Seattle some difficulty, a lot of difficulty, was Houston. However, Stroud I don't know what the hell happened to him. I mean, he just fell apart.
He's the same thing. He couldn't handle the big moment. He didn't even get to the bigger moments.
He's been around a little longer, but honestly, when you look back at his career, the only time he ever did well was that first year. Since then, he's been slipping. I think, you know, that was the one thing that could have caused Seattle trouble, was a defense like they had, because that was, to me, the best defense in the league. But it wasn't enough if Stroud's going to give you the ball 5-6 times a game. So.
Yeah. Chris, for you, are you seeing right now the Rams being the preseason for next year right now?
Yeah, I think they're a deserving favorite. You know, to Jim's point, when it came down, I really was betting college all year. I didn't really mess with the pros till kind of towards the end of the season. But as I was watching, like the last maybe month, 6 weeks of the season, to me, it looked like the NFC was like the JV team.
Oh, that's a
And,
great analogy. Great analogy.
And the NFC was the varsity. Now, I had a lot of respect for the Rams, but then their defense kind of fell apart late in the season.
And their special teams.
Their special teams really killed them. And I had Seattle against the Rams in that game. So I kind of, and actually one of my supervisors reminded me when Seattle traded for Rashid.
Oh, Shaheed, yeah.
Yeah, and I told him, I said, that really is going to help them quite a bit, And, I kind of, was on Seattle ever since that. But really, that JV and varsity thing, I think, was a good, analogy on my part. Because I think the NFC was much better. Jim mentioned there's a lot of weak teams in the AFC. I think that's true, And, right now, I would see the AFC is wide open.
Well, they're going to get a little older next year. Some of those young quarterbacks, coaches are going to improve with age and experience. So we might actually see a whole flip around. I mean, some of the quarterbacks in the NFC are a little older, and they are going to probably leave the game soon. So things will change.
Stafford, I think, has at least another year in him, and then we'll see after that.
He can stay healthy, yes.
If I could add to that,
Sure.
I used to take pride in projecting how good a quarterback would be in the pros coming out of college, because I felt like if I watched a young quarterback in the preseason or the first couple of games in the regular season, I always had a good handle on how good they were going to be over the course of their career in the pros. But that theory's out the window now. I mean, look, with this kid now that won the Super Bowl. It took him how long to become a good NFL quarterback?
Five different teams.
Yeah, Daniel Jones is another one.
And he was written off how many times?
And I had written him off.
The marriage between the quarterback and the offensive coordinator and the head coach is important. So if you get a kid coming in that's got a lot of talent and a lot of potential, and he gets with the wrong marriage, then it's a disaster.
Well, speaking of that, you called it. The marriage now you're going to have with Rodgers and the Steelers and the new head coach.
Right.
You called exactly what that was going to happen, and this might just revitalize Rodgers.
I don't know how many more years he has. I mean, the chronological age is catching up to him, but with Mike McCaffrey going there, that could be different because they do know each other. They go back to Green Bay, but we don't know what Rodgers is going to do. I mean, he's kind of like a flake. But if he comes back, he still could throw the ball as good as anybody.
That's right.
He just doesn't have any mobility. But the marriage between the quarterback and the coach and the quarterback and the offensive coordinator is extremely important. I mean, just look what happened up in Chicago. I mean, that was amazing what happened, with Caleb Williams
and Ben Johnson.
And Ben Johnson. So you got to look at the whole mixture. It's not just one kid. No quarterback's going to go out there and win the game for you. Although they get paid a lot of money, they can't do it without an offensive line. I mean, the left tackle for the Patriots in the Super Bowl was a disaster. He could not stop anybody. And when you don't have a left tackle with a right-handed quarterback, you're pretty much dead. And when you look at the Super Bowl last year, even with Mahomes, the left tackle was a disaster. And they had to switch the right tackle over to get it, and that didn't work out. I mean, you have to have an offensive line. There's so many things you need to have a winning team. And right now, we have a lot of B teams and C teams and D teams. But we don't have what he said is
JV
JV teams.
Right, I like that. That's a perfect analogy. I'm using it. Trust me.
Feel free.
I absolutely love
I'll give you my address when you send me the checks.
When
Deals.
I played basketball in high school, I was on the JV team. Well, only played on the main team when somebody got hurt. I was definitely not one of them.
Now you're not. Now you're a Hall of Famer. You're not even on the legendary
No, I'm
team.
just on the couch. That's all.
Art and Chris, let me ask you this because you guys both can speak to this. What's it like being on the other side of a sports book when you have the prep to get ready for the day, get your team ready to make sure the guests can get their bets in and get what they want? What's that like for you guys?
I always felt like I was one of the coaches going into the game because you needed all the same amount of preparation, preparing your staff, making sure that you're fully staffed, making sure that your party is set up properly, making sure you have gaming control board approval for remote betting stations, and so on and so forth. There's a million things to worry about. Making sure the cash is accounted for at the end of the day is not the least of them for either, by the way, and making sure you win a little bit for all the effort. So there's a lot that goes into it. I always took it very, very seriously, and I was as stressed out as the coaches.
Wow.
Well, I would say from my end, I have a great support team, from Michael Vaughn and Frank Toby all the way down. And they give me a lot of autonomy. And we have more ticket writers. We have, like on Saturday and Sunday, we've got 12 ticket writers, besides 8 kiosks, And, the lines are full. And I think a lot of guys think we write more tickets in one location than anybody else. I think that's probably true, and part of it is just to have that kind of support. But like Art said, you have to make sure everybody's ready, and when I get new hires at the South Point, I always kind of give the same speech. Nobody takes better care of you than Michael Vaughn and his team. They treat you great. But the catch is, when it's busy, you're expected to work, and it gets busy a lot. So enjoy the downtimes. They're not very often. But then when it's busy, get ready, because we're going to be having a lot of customers.
I got to ask you a question. Super Bowl is gone. Now basketball's here. I mean, we're not running out of sports. We still have sports. But you have the NCAA Final Four coming up. And I know how big that is, and it's kind of extended. I mean, this is a one deal, with the one game Super Bowl. But that Final Four and that whole month, that bigger, harder to manage. More people on staff to cover that?
Yeah, everybody is on staff. Everybody is ready. Matter of fact, I got Michael Vaughn's son and his 2 grandsons. And I said, I need everybody.
And even though they're only 4 and 5 years old, they still make them work, right?
Hey, as long as they can count. The first 2 days of the NCAA tournament, well, first of all, I do love it, because it is absolutely nuts and tons of business. But I kind of enjoy Saturday and Sunday a little better, because, first of all, the basketball's a little better, because we weeded out those bad teams that just snuck into the tournament, and have a chance to watch a little bit and kind of appreciate those 4 days.
I got to add to that. In addition, go ahead.
I was going to say that I've always believed that if I ever moved out of town, which I won't, but if I did for some reason,
Isn't your visa?
I'm good. But I would visit Las Vegas these first 4 days. That's
If you could get a hotel.
If you could get a hotel.
Right.
Get reservations early.
Yeah.
That's right. But starting, last year we got this new thing in college, the nil and the portal. And this guy's an ex-coach, so he knows what I'm talking about here, and he knows a lot about all this. But I don't know if we're going to have those upsets, because all the good players are gravitating to the better teams where they get more money, and the kids that used to play at the minor schools could pull these upsets.
That's right.
But I don't see that happening anymore. It didn't happen last year.
I think we're going to see less and less of that. Yeah, right. I think we're going to see less and less of that, Chris.
And I'm wearing my Montana hat, so I have kids in Montana, so I follow Montana.
Sure.
They're losing kids. I mean, that whole league is, they're looking to move up. I mean, you can't blame the kids.
No.
But even like if you're, let's say you're a MAC athlete and you're playing for Miami, Ohio, or Ball State or whatever, you want to move up to that Big Ten where you're going to get more experience. Now, maybe you're not going to be on Ohio State or Michigan, but you're going to even get to Purdue, Northwestern, and you're going to get more exposure and then get a better chance of getting drafted higher.
You brought up Miami, Ohio, and trust me, don't think that these Power 5 schools aren't looking at this undefeated team going,
oh, that's a good team.
Who are we going to poach and take off of here next year? They're already got them guys pegged out.
They're still undefeated?
The only team left. Yeah.
I think Arizona just lost. So
They did
They
against
lost to
Kansas.
Kansas the other night, yeah.
Now, I'd like to talk about that Kansas team. They have a kid on there named Peterson. He's only played 11 of 24 games.
Don't get me started.
Now, okay, is this guy practicing for the load management in the NBA? What the hell's going on?
Let me tell you what I found out about this. He was supposed to play on Monday against Arizona. Something happened between Self and Peterson at practice, and Self benched him. And now the word's starting to circulate that there's dissension all along a line, because this kid takes himself out of games. Self doesn't sub him out. He's taking himself out. So he doesn't want to play and saying, I got this injury, I got to put ice on my knees. And I think it's come to the point now where Kansas needs to make a run. It's getting late in the season. and Self has had enough of this kid. And I don't know if you'll see him again.
Well, I've heard something from some people I know that his draft status is going down because people don't know if his attitude is going to carry over to the pros, and you're not going to be able to depend on him.
Jim, what are you talking about? He'll be perfect for all his load management. That's the profile of that.
What the hell am I thinking about? You're
Art,
right.
I got a question for you, and I was looking into your book. I want to know what it's like for you, coming up in this business along with legendary odds maker Roxy Roxborough. What was that like?
Roxy was always a good friend and a great help. And Chris and I were his first two customers when he started Las Vegas Sports Consultants back in the mid-'80s, I guess.
No, it was earlier than that. 81, 82.
Wow. Chris was literally his first customer.
You were his first customer.
And I was his second. Yeah. And by the way, we didn't mention this in this interview, but Chris and I have known each other our entire lives.
Oh, yeah.
We grew up a couple blocks
2
away.
months apart.
Yeah.
2 months apart.
Yeah.
Roxy Roxborough. Listen, if he ever wanted to switch bankrolls, I'm up for it. But he slept on my couch in those early days, and that's God's honest.
Really?
Yeah. So we were good friends. We had a lot of good times together. Some that we won't even speak about.
Well, both of you
I got some of those stories in my new book that's coming out, and Roxy approved them.
Okay,
I ran
good.
by it first.
I tell a story in the book about traveling around the country with Roxy at the Hilton one time back in it was 1990. We had just opened the Flamingo Hilton and tied it to the Las Vegas Hilton by computer data lines, and it was a seamless operation. And it became very apparent to us that we could operate a sportsbook remotely from one centralized bookmaking center. And so we went to racetracks around the country. We thought we could open sportsbooks in other states at racetracks. We thought that the Interstate Wire Act and the Interstate Horse Racing Act would allow for that. So we pursued it. And one time, Roxy and I were stuck in an airport for a couple hours, and they ran several episodes of Jeopardy, which I like it, but it's a very tough game show for me at least. I swear, Roxy answered every single question on multiple shows, every single question, and I was sitting there in awe. I said, "Oh my God, this guy's way smarter than I ever realized." And it's true, he is. He's a genius.
Well, you brought up the Hilton because you helped open the Hilton book, correct, with Conrad?
I opened the Hilton book.
And how was that, putting that all together?
It was a fun project, but it was a lot of work. I did, and I talked about this also. I did emulate the Stardust. The old Stardust book was the model for the Las Vegas Hilton Super book. I think we did a great job. We put pieces in place that are still used by the industry today. Mandalay Bay, in particular, I think, was a pretty close replica of the Hilton Super book, and it's still an industry leader, and very proud of what we built and what we accomplished.
So, Chris, you came up with the Stardust, and Art, you've been around a long time. So, what kind of interactions do you guys have with like the lefties and the Tonys and the Johnny Tacos and stuff of this world?
I mentioned a few of those stories, but I made the joke. I said, I'm not mentioning any names to protect the innocent. Well, we have a few stories, and I know Art has some, and I have some that I think I'm just going to kind of keep to myself. But we saw a lot of stuff back in those days. But Art talked about how we learned the business. Well, we learned a lot of things that you're really not supposed to do, But then carried that forth, and I've been fortunate. Like I said, I went from the Stardust to Michael Gahn, who ran. Everything was on the up and up. Then I went to the Calneva, where I worked for Warren Nelson, who was Jackie Gahn's best friend. So again, everything was on the up and up. And I've been around a couple times.
And that was after the Sinatra had it. So.
Oh, that split up. Yeah, that's another story. But I've been fortunate. I really haven't had to monkey with anything too out of bounds.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that worked out well for me.
Art, do you have a story you can share with us?
Well, yeah, some of Spilacio's guys I used to deal with.
The hole in the wall game?
Yeah, especially his driver. I did do, and it wasn't fun, and it was intimidating dealing with him at the Stardust. But then when I moved over to the Barbary Coast, actually I replaced Chris, and Chris moved up north to the Calneva. I took his spot at the Barbary Coast. And at one time he came in and bet 16 college basketball games for a dime each. I charged him 16.5, took the money. He went on his way, and I turned up 1,100 short that night. It was supposed to be 17,600, and I was panicky because I was still a young employee and a relatively new employee at the Barbary Coast, and I was fearful for my job. But the great bookmaker Jimmy Vaccaro was my boss, who I called immediately when I realized what had happened. And he told me not to worry about it. Just don't worry about it, kid. Turn your money in and go home. I did that, and I came to find later that Jimmy went in the next morning and covered that shortage out of his pocket and saved me. And I'm forever grateful. And see, if I had lost my job at that time, I probably never would have rebounded, never would have had the career that I did. So I owe a lot to Jimmy Vaccaro.
And you were under him too, right, Chris?
Oh, I owe a lot to Jimmy Vaccaro. I mean, and again with Art, I met Jimmy. I was 12 years old. I'm 69 now. Do the math. That's a long time. I've known Jimmy a long time, and I worked for him, and then and I laughed later on. He worked for me. Jimmy doesn't work for anybody. Jimmy is Jimmy. And my one story at that when my first day I started at the South Point, Michael Vaughn pulls me aside and says, Can you get Jimmy to wear his name tag? I says, Michael, you can't get Jimmy to wear his name tag. How am I going to do it? And then I realized everybody in town knows Jimmy. He didn't need a name tag.
By the way, where is he now?
He's in Trafford, Pennsylvania. Trafford, PA.
So
let me add one more thing, because you were talking about Nil and the Porter a little bit earlier. For better or worse, whether you like that or don't like it, there's one person primarily responsible for that, and that's his brother, Sonny.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. That goes way back into the 5-star camp days with Sonny.
Yeah, Dapper Dan roundball class.
Yeah.
Chris and I, as little kids,
Ball boys.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but I remember back then when we were young, I remember Sonny complaining to Uncle Jack. We were out to dinner after practice or something, and he was complaining that he couldn't buy these kids a hamburger. Some of the kids that were coming in for his All-Star basketball game, they were so poor, and he couldn't do anything for them. And that bothered him, and he pursued changing the playing field for all these years until he finally was successful.
Jim, for you, I mean, you've been in this business for over 6 decades. Going back to those days of the Stardust and the books that were off on the strip but not part of the casino, how was that industry for you then?
Oh, so different. A long time ago. I mean, there's so much less regulation in many ways. The thing was, it was so hard to get information back then because you had no internet. You got, basically cell phones were difficult. I mean, they were hard to get to. And no texting, nothing like that. So the biggest challenge I had in those days was getting information. So we used to get the newspapers off the airplanes. Of course, everybody'd fight for them because everybody got the idea that we could get the out-of-town newspapers on the planes coming in, but everybody wanted them because the only way you can get the information, because there was no way. You can't go on the, go to Toledo online and read about the team.
Right.
So that was the biggest problem we had. And of course, I moved here from Florida in early 70, and the reason I did is because when I was betting in Florida, it was easy to pay the bookie when I lost. It was very hard to get paid. So I decided this formula isn't going to work. So I came to Vegas in 70.
Art, show your book up to the camera so everybody can get this. This is a brand new book here, The Bookie. Where can they get it? On Amazon?
Yeah, it's on Amazon and HarperCollins.com.
Perfect. And when's your new book coming out, Chris?
Well, I don't know. I'm hoping to get it to the publisher literally today or tomorrow. But my other 3 books are available on Amazon.
What are the names of those books?
Well, the first one, that sold really well. It's called Then One Day. And it's a bunch of stories that I was on a radio show. And I was, it reminded me, things were normal. Then one day, blah, blah, blah. I named the book after that. That one sold really well. Now, my second book, the publisher wanted me to follow up the first one. I didn't want to do the exact same thing. But I said, how about a year in the life of a bookmaker? That sounds great. What year do I pick? 2020, the year of COVID.
Oh, no.
And I mean, halfway through, I said, you want me to still do this? He says, yeah, just keep doing it, and we'll figure out at the end. So that one did not sell nearly as well. Although I have to say, like Roxy, Vic Salerno, guys in the business, they love that book. They think it's great. It's a lot of inside baseball. And then I have a novel that I wrote, and it has a Greek title, Adolphosmo, which means my brother. A couple brothers, they do, well, let's just say the one kid's a great quarterback, and his father was a former bookmaker, and they want the kid to throw a football. They wanted the kid to throw a bowl game.
Okay.
So things start falling apart from there.
Right.
So I just realized something. There's 4 people here on this panel, and 3 of them have a book, and 1 doesn't.
Yeah, you're right.
And I think you should have a book. I think you should have a book.
I started, but then I had to go back and start changing the names.
Again, you got to protect the innocent.
Yeah.
I know that.
Exactly.
So you have something started. We just got to finish
I
it.
have 60,000 words.
Oh, well, then you're ready to go.
Yeah.
You're ready to go.
But I have to go back and edit the names, like I said. It's true. I'm
Perfect.
not lying.
Well,
So look
I-
forward for the book
yeah.
coming by Jim Feist soon.
I want to see that one. I want to read.
Oh, no. Oh, no. So I have to change your name, too.
Art, tell me about you playing a little bit of cat and mouse with Billy Walters.
Ooh. Well, tough question. Good question. No question that Mr. Walters is a great handicapper, great talent, and very, very good at what he does. But I always looked at myself as, I looked at our relationship as very adversarial. I mean, he wanted the money. He wanted my money. I wanted his. And so we were always very on very opposite sides of the counter in more ways than one. I saw certain things in his operation and in his MO that I thought were very close to the line regulatorily. And my sports books always operated with real strict compliance procedures. And because of that, I did not view him as a VIP customer, certainly. And in fact, in all the years that I built and ran sportsbooks in Las Vegas, over 40 years, I never saw him personally had to make a wager himself, wow. And that was very concerning to me. Just that alone.
So, Chris, tell me about the company you used to have called Against the Number. You ended up selling that to go when you went to the South Point in 2016.
I did, yeah. When I was out of the business for a while, I wanted to get back in, but it was hard to find the right spot for me. I had a couple offers that were actually, 6 figures, but I turned them down. They just didn't quite appeal to me. I met a young man by the name of Matt Clark, who, by the way, passed away recently. A young man of 48 years old, and and people would approach me over the years with different things, and he had this program. I said, man, this is actually pretty good. So we started a company. Bill Thornton, who was a former partner of mine at the Calneva, he kind of bankrolled us, and it took a while to get the business up and going. And I remember, it was just funny having a conversation with my wife. I said, you know what? I think we finally got our feet on the ground. We're making good money. I think this thing's going to work. And the next day, I got a call from Michael Vaughn. And he says, I want you to come down. And I remember my wife was sleeping on the couch. She said, what was that? I said, well, Michael Vaughn offered me a job, but of course I have to. So are you crazy? Yeah, you got to go work for Michael Vaughn. Are you nuts? And we were living in Reno at the time. But anyway, that business, and I see some guys, and I don't want to mention their names, but I see a couple guys out there now that I have a lot of respect for. They kind of took that concept and took it to another level. I really didn't want to sell picks, but at some point, guys just want to, they want free money. Jim probably knows that. We were trying to do some other things, but we wound up, selling picks, and fortunately, did pretty good. It was making pretty good money doing it, but when it came down to either, that maintaining that or working for Michael Vaughn, it really was kind of a no-brainer.
Jim, when did you first start putting online stuff or putting paid services together?
It was in the late 60s. I was in Florida.
Oh, you started that in Florida before you came into that.
Right. I came here. Actually, excuse me. Yes, I started the business in Florida, came here, and I came here, like I said, 1970. The business was different then. We were the competition then was way different. It was hard to market. I was in the marketing business. I knew how to market. Many of the people in the industry did not know how to market. So I built a very large business, and it flourished for well over 20 years. We had a TV show for 36 years, and we did very well. It's different today. I mean, you can go to websites today, and I'm not saying you're going to win, but it's hard to win no matter whether you're paying for service or you're not paying for service. It's hard for anybody to win and overcome what you have to pay for the picks. So, I mean, for example, if you call somebody and you say, I'll charge you $500 a month, and it is $100 better, and now you've got to give him enough winners to overcome the juice that he's paying, which is usually 11 to 10, and then he's got to make enough to overcome the $500 he paid you and still make a profit. Well, honestly, when you really look at it, it's very difficult to do. So what the industry has gravitated towards is advertising-based businesses, where you can go to a site and you can pay a subscription, $300, $400, $500 a year, get picks from 20, 30 people, and never pay anything except the subscription price. Now, I'm not going to say you're going to win, but you're going to get good information, and you're going to have to digest it yourself. But you have a much better chance, if you can do that, to overcome that cost of $500, because it's only $500 a year as opposed to $500 a week. So, the industry has totally changed. I don't know that it's a good idea to ever, and I'm in the wrong, I shouldn't be saying this, but people are going to want to kill me. You're paying money for picks, which I still sell picks, but it's really difficult for guys like me to give you enough winners to overcome what you're paying, which is why I don't charge very much anymore. In the old days, you could charge anything you wanted. You didn't even realize that you were creating an industry that you couldn't overcome the cost. I do now, because I look at it now and I say, how the hell can you pay somebody $8,000 a year, give him, unless he's $100,000 a year better, or $100,000 a game better, or $10,000 or something like that, to overcome that juice that you're paying the service. And then on the other side, the service doesn't actually have to win. They're trying to. Of course, nobody's trying to lose. So it's a very difficult business, especially now when it's an advertising based business where the companies are giving the picks out and they're only making money on the advertising they're taking in for their website, as opposed to what we used to do. But in the old days, you got to remember, there were no cell phones,
Right.
There were no internet, there was no texting, and there was no websites. So
Did you use the pay per minute phone, where they would call and you'd get charged? They would get charged by calling in.
I did that too, but I did that in a number of businesses.
Okay.
Back in those days, I was running 15, 20 businesses at the same time. So it was a profitable time, but it was difficult to stay on top of it all. I'm glad I'm not doing that anymore.
Yeah, I would add to that, Jim, that what I always respected of you and your operation is, and Jim and I were close and knew each other quite well for a long time. I always respected the fact that you put your money where your mouth is. And I knew that. I saw that firsthand. I knew that when you were giving out a pick, that's who you were behind and you were backing financially. And that's not always the case, right? I'm afraid, with some of your competitors. For many years while I was running sports books, I used to ask three things of my staff. I wanted to know who Jim liked in a game. I wanted to know who our Uncle Jack, Pittsburgh Jack Franzi, was liked in a game. And I also wanted to know who Hank Goldberg liked in the NFL each week. Hank of ESPN for many, many years. So you were one of the three monuments that I looked for.
Two great guys.
Yeah. You had good company, but I wanted your picks too.
Art, from you now being retired, what's it like being in the industry, like being outside of it now?
It's complicated. It really is. I watched so much sports all my life. We all did. We watched the games, like crazy growing up. And then in the business for all those years, I had 4 TVs in my office, always on sports every day. So I was just consumed with watching sports. and then you go home and watch sports in the evenings. And then all of a sudden, I had no financial interest in the game. You know, I wasn't playing, and I wasn't booking suddenly. So I didn't have a financial interest in the games for ever since. And I watch less sports now than I ever have, and I didn't expect that. I always told everybody I'm always going to be as much of a sports fan as I have always been my whole life. Well, that didn't necessarily happen. Without that financial incentive, it didn't work out the way I thought it would.
But you did tune into bed.
I did.
Chris, you brought up Uncle Jack Franz. You grew up in the same household.
Oh yeah. And what an education, and not only from Jack, he was in that first class of the Hall of Fame, and well deserved. But I would come out. Jack moved to Vegas, and everyone knows the story. He got indicted in 1970. He moved out here so he could do everything legal. And just briefly, my father also died in 1970. So Jack was a father and running a business out here, and he would fly Zach and I, his son, out here, and we would come out, and and not only would Jack take us to lunch, I'm with like Bob Martin, Billy Baxter, right. Blackie, Joe Snyder, and Art was in a lot of those too. You know what I mean?
Herb Lembeck.
Yeah, Herb Lembeck. I mean, the education we got, and I remember, and then Jackie gone, and then later on I got to know Jackie much better, even when I was working for Mike. I mean, I would say like the education I got. There's no way you could get a better education for our life than what I learned from those guys. And I even said at the time, if I fail in this business, it's nobody's fault but mine. I got the best education possible.
Wait a second, Chris. I don't know if you didn't read this yet, but I do tell the story about my brother bought me a car. Uncle Jack gave him a car and Zach a car. And while we were all going to college, we were right out of high school. We wrecked all three. And Uncle Jack, after Chris, I think, was the third, his was the last to go. And the next day, Uncle Jack made him and I fly out to Las Vegas, literally to yell at us. And I think that was the extent of it, and shipped us back home.
Yeah, that morning we were on the plane. He fed us, thank God. And that evening, back on the plane, back to Pittsburgh.
When you were young in high school and stuff, did you ever imagine you'd be in this business?
Oh God, yeah.
You did.
Yeah, well, that's our.
Because you followed Jack and Uncle Jack.
Yeah. We had a blackjack game going on, And,
You did.
Yeah, we had a blackjack game. In the cafeteria, and I remember we had trouble collecting a couple times. Guys.
We know about that.
And our good friend was the center on the football team. Teddy Stabrak is a big Greek kid. But Teddy, we'll give you half the money, but you got to go collect off these guys. Anyway, Teddy wound up collecting. So,
well, yeah, if he was that big, you're paying.
Anybody have any questions for these guys? Yes.
This is to Chris and Art. Back in the day, how did you police when it was against the rules regulation when runners were placing bets? And then how did you guys police that? Blind eye sometimes, kick guys out, or how did that? What would you do?
Yeah. You want to go first, and then I would answer.
Yeah, it is very, very difficult, and some people would say that they were partners and not employees or not paid runners. So it's very, very difficult, and it still is. But I took a hard line on that myself. And I didn't believe that was lucrative business anyway myself. So some folks in this room may not agree with that, or might not agree with that operating philosophy. But I did, and I found that it worked for me financially and kept the operation strictly under compliance guidelines.
In my history, I had some runners that I was lucky. The runners I had picked the money up and actually gave it to me, which was nice.
And actually gave it to you.
Yeah, actually did. I had some people, and some of them, and they're passed now, Gary and both people, that their runners just took the money and ran.
Okay, sure.
And a lot of money, and they just disappeared, or they got robbed in the parking lot, or that's what they said they had.
Right.
So, it was a nasty time.
What with the gaming board, could they penalize them if you reported them, or what was it, a misdemeanor? Was it something, or how?
They could penalize us.
Okay.
I'll tell you
Penalize
very
you,
briefly.
even though you didn't know.
Yeah, Yeah, I'm actually still technically a licensee, so I own the piece of Calneva. And I got called forward for suitability, mostly because Bill Bible did not like me. And my
There's the name.
association with Uncle Jack. And he,
In the
you know,
first book, I remember
yeah,
that one.
and he did not like me. So I got called up for suitability, and I had to devise a plan. You know, I said, well, you know, and I said, well, you tell me how to stop these runners. I had 28 locations. Like, how could I, you know? He said, well, how, you have to come up with the plan. I was okay. I said, if we see somebody answering a beep, we didn't have cell phones that much. Somebody taking a beep and then running to the counter, we won't take a bet. We won't let them bet both sides of the game. And then if all that fails, we'll just ask the guy, are you a runner? And believe it or not, one guy actually said, yeah, I'm a runner. One guy in all those years. And then I didn't mean to say yes.
He meant he runs during the day for exercise.
Yeah, it's too late. There's nothing I can do.
He wasn't actually a runner for somebody else.
Yeah.
Chris, while I have you on there, any thoughts on who you like in March Madness this year? You got a pick?
Oh, man. Well, I'd probably like Arizona.
Don't like him anymore because they lost. I mean, they're
no,
good.
the only thing I would say about Kansas, you know, and Kansas is really tough at home. You know, they're not going to have that same. I mean, you know, they usually tend to get a little overseeded. You know, they can kind of get the breaks. We'll see how that goes. I think it's tough to pick against Arizona right now. They really look like the best team, even though they lost a heartbreaker the other night.
With the nil in the portal, there's a lot more spread in talent, which was what we had in football. I mean, who ever heard of Indiana having the best football team? You know, that kind of thing.
Cincinnati did when he took the job.
Yeah, but he did a hell of a job. But this is going to happen, I think, and it's going to be continuous. So there's got to be some dark horses, say in the top 20 teams that are live, but the bottom 40 teams are out of, you know, or 48 teams.
Jim, I don't even know if it's 20. I think there only might be 8 or 10 teams that really have a shot to win this thing.
Well, you got to get lucky with your threes, you know, and that's going to be a big thing. I think Iowa State, another team, they're pretty good. I think they got.
You're the third person that told me I was in the last 2 days.
If I have to put my money down, I'm probably going to split my money between Arizona and Michigan.
Well, they're the top. Yeah. They're the top two teams.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Michigan is. I mean, they lost at home against Wisconsin. They had 15 threes to beat them at Michigan, and since then they've rattled off 8 or 9 in a row by an average of 17 points per game. This team is deep, and they got caught. Everybody's going to get caught.
Yeah.
Between Michigan and Arizona, I'd love to see that game.
Well, like last year, I thought Duke was clearly the best team, but then they got beat. You know, I mean, that's just what happened. You know, St. John's has a good team. You know, Connecticut's going to be tough.
They're tough too.
Yeah, there's some good teams.
How about you, Art?
All I know is that it's not going to be UNLV or Pitt or San Diego State, which I have allegiance to right now.
What's the price I have to lay on that?
Super dark.
They don't print that much money, Jim.
We want to thank Jay Lore. We have 3 bottles of wine that we always give away after we go off the air. Next week will be our last week here live, and we'll have Kenny and Alex White with us. And then it's going to transition to Jim's house here, and he's going to have a guest on every night or every week, and we'll get links and everything to you. But do you know more about this? However, in a couple weeks,
well, I'm going to do a show from my house, and we use a technology called StreamYard. And gentlemen, if you're available 12 o'clock on a Wednesday, we kind of set it up. One of you every week, just one guest. And we have a lot of people that have been on the show for the last 2 years, and we'll have them as well. But we're going to try to cover just general sports. And if we have something that we give out, no charge, it's all free for the listener. And Dom DeMarco is the sponsor. So we're going to just continue it through the summer. Maybe we'll take a month off for, the All-Star break. But we're going to cover everything. And we'll talk a lot about the draft. We'll talk about NFL, because this is an NFL show. But people bet. And as we know, baseball, football, basketball, tennis, golf, everything. And we will talk about that. And Ray, you got a question?
You got a question before we close up?
I got a pretty good question because we never get this guy here.
What is it?
A pretty big one here.
About how good the chocolate is on the table? It's excellent.
You know, I was thinking a lot over the weekend. I knew you were going to be here, and it's a pretty good question. So, where do you see this whole industry in 3 years? You know, from my experience here in the past couple of years, when I walk into a casino, I see more dudes playing dice in a machine than at the actual table. Those guys are gone. When I went to make a couple bets this weekend, I'm Joe Public. I'm not a shark like these guys. I do every day a little here and there. I go a little special on Super Bowl. I ran into a little bit of a problem that I see even more. Keyshawn Booty under 2.5. I'm not like Alberto and all these guys where they bet thousands and thousands. I went to make one. They stopped me. I went up there. They said, no, you can't bet that much. I went on my Kalshi app. No problem. No juice. How is this going to sustain itself when they keep blocking everybody? Where do you see this whole? If Caesar's charging $500 a table, that place ain't what it used to be for a Super Bowl. Where do you see this whole industry in 3 years as far as sports betting, handles, money shifting? Do you see a dramatic change with robotics up front, everything AI? Do you see this totally shifting on a paradigm? What do you see?
Who's your question for?
You.
Okay. That's what I was afraid of.
You want to pass it to Chris?
No, it's a very tough question and a very important question. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, I'm concerned about the integration now between the leagues themselves and the sports gaming companies. That's just for one issue. I'm also not real thrilled when I go into some sports books, especially at smaller locations that are almost now entirely kiosk only wagering, where everything is automated. Literally no employees in the sports book. Not thrilled about that as far as customer service is concerned. And customer service applies to technology too. If things don't work properly or you can't get the bet down that you're trying to make, that's very poor customer service, obviously. If your mobile app, for whatever reason, you can't get the bet down immediately that you're trying to make, that's poor customer service also. So the customer service aspect of the business concerns me a lot. Some of the practices on the strip that you talked about, the high limits or big charges for tables, charges for parking, charges, up charges for almost anything you do. That's a serious concern. And Las Vegas is coming to that reality here now, I'm afraid. And the hotel room rates over Super Bowl weekend, I think, were indicative of the fact that there is a problem. We all have to address that.
I get nothing. I get nothing on my app for everything that I do. We get nothing. We get no rooms. We get nothing. We get nothing.
Yeah.
It's Kalshi's right there, just free.
And when I'll be honest with you, when all of my years in the business, I rewarded parlay players. And I did not reward straight bet players that very much at all. Very, very, very little. And why? Why is that? Because as a bookmaker, I cleaned up with the parlay players, and I pushed that business as much as I could. But the guys like Jim or others that we're talking about, some of the folks in this room, I wasn't looking to give away comps and so forth to players like that because they weren't lucrative customers for the business. But that has to change now, because of the reasons you're saying, competing with Kalshi and competing with some of the big interstate companies. Yeah, you have to be competitive now. And so my philosophy would change on that if I was back in the business. But Vegas is still the most exciting city in the world, in my opinion. And I hope that everyone comes to their senses. And I hope that there's a little bit less influence of the analysts who analyze square footage and how much a property makes by square footage. I remember a time I took my staff of sportsbook managers. We had 18 books at that time, so I had the manager of each property and some of the other supervisors I took to lunch downtown. And then we did a trip on a bus. We had a bus going up the strip and stopped at every sports book along the way. And just looking at screens, looking at carpets, looking at scratch sheets, just looking for ideas of what everybody else was doing. And we made our way up the strip. And then at the end of the day, we got to the South Point. And I told everybody, now I'm going to take you where all the customers are. And sure enough, we walked into the South Point and the place was packed. Yeah. And that I think, is a lesson that is lost on most people today.
Yeah, I think the South Point is still great.
Get yourself to Amazon, buy Art's book, The Bookie, How I Bet It All on Sports Gambling and Watch the Industry Explode. Chris Andrews has some books. Look for his brand new one, Jim's going to finish his book after he changes all the names in it, and you can get his book coming up. How about a round of applause for Chris Andrews, Art Manteris, Jim Feist. My name is Tommy Canale. We will see you guys next week right here at noon for the last live show of the Jim Feist Pro Football Handicapping Show. We'll talk to you next week.